In today's episode of the Motorhome Matt podcast,
I give my top tips to avoid the motorhome's worst enemy, water ingress.
And we're back with Alan Rogers for another campsite of the month.
And we answer your questions about hookups, beam deflectors and comprehensive insurance for non-EU countries.
Welcome to the Motorhome Matt podcast. I'm Keith Gooden.
And I'm Motorhome Matt.
Industry insights and expert advice for the world of motorhomes, caravans and camper vans, all brought to you by thatleisureshop.com.
Now, please do remember to follow on your favourite podcast app and make sure you click subscribe on YouTube, brought to you by arabasecreative.co.uk. It's time for our regular feature, the Alan Rogers Campsite of the Month. Alan, welcome once again.
Hi, Matt.
So, Alan, this month we're not in France for the first time.
No.
We're in Ireland, the beautiful Emerald Isle. So where are we?
Yeah, so we're going to venture to Ireland this month and we're heading to County Cork. We're down on the south coast and Blarney Camping Park.
I've been through that region. So what did this campsite win? It won an award.
So, yeah, this campsite won the Small and Charming Campsite Award.
I'm surprised you didn't win that. Small, charming, is Alan all over.
Yes.
So what features can we expect to see then at Blarney Park?
So our Small and Charming category is for, obviously, sites that are a lot smaller than some of the large sites we've been discussing in recent months.
Okay, I guess the clue's in the name.
Yeah, absolutely. So this site's only got 80 touring pitches.
Okay.
And with it being in a rural location in Ireland, it doesn't have all the facilities that you'd expect of some of those larger continental sites that we've talked about.
This is a very different type of campsite to those big, kind of more corporate campsites we've been hearing about in France, isn't it?
It is. It's just much more back to basics. It's sort of like an extended CL or a CS that you might get here in the UK. So
Okay, so just explain for us what a CL and a CS is.
So certified location or a certified site.
Yeah.
So the 4 or 5 vans on basically on a patch of grass, usually attached to a farm or something like that.
And often in a beautiful location as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so why would we want to visit Blarney? What's there?
Well, obviously there's a world famous castle.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been there and kissed the stone. You've got the gift of the gab, haven't you?
What are you saying?
Well,
I have been there and I have kissed the stone, you're right, yeah.
Yeah. So as well as the castle, you've got the pretty harbour town of Cove, which was the last place the Titanic docked before its final voyage.
Right, okay.
And you've also got the Jameson's distillery in Cork there as well.
The world famous whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a reason enough to go, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant.
3-acre park. Stunning views. From the top of the site, you can see down the valley to the world famous castle.
Yeah.
Con, the owner, you've probably met him at the NEC. He's always on the Irish stand.
He's a top man.
Yeah.
Proper Irishman.
Lovely Irish bloke, yeah.
Yeah, very warm welcome from Con whenever you say hello, I have to say.
Yeah, and the same on the site as well. When you visit, it's absolutely, you're welcomed as if you're a member of the family.
Yeah. Sounds amazing. So when is the site open?
He's open from quite early, actually. It's from mid-March to the end of October. Price-wise, it's sort of in the mid-range again, so from about £30 per night.
Brilliant. So that's it for this month, the Alan Rogers Campsite of the Month. Thanks, Alan. And if you want to find out more about all of Alan's campsites, you can do so at mhmp.info/Alan Rogers.
Cheers.
It's the Motorhome Matt podcast with me, Keith Gooden.
And me, Motorhome Matt.
Brought to you by thatleisureshop.com. What is our product of the week, Matt?
This is the Maypole Auto Tent. Oh, there it is.
I thought you were just happy to see me.
Every day, Keith, every day. So let's put it around the right way so you can see it. Yeah. Two-berth auto tent. Look, it's a tent in a bag. It's a tent in a bag. And do you know the best thing about this? Not only is it really, really easy to put up, it's really easy to get back in the bag. How many times have you said that about a tent?
Well, I mean, those modern tents, I say modern, they're about 20 years old, where you take them out of the bag and they spring out and you think, that's fantastic. Try and get them back in that bag. So you're absolutely right.
There's a prize for getting them back in the bag. This one is dead easy. You just unfurl it and fold out the exoskeleton. There's no poles to assemble. They're all attached to the tent. And pull it up, push the little bit of the top down and the tent pops open. My daughter's used them. She's been to lots of festivals with her mates. It says 2-berth, but there's 4 of them at least in this tent. Reading Festival, and she loves hers, and we sell loads of these at shows. So they are great. They're $79.99. They take up very little room when they're packed up. Super easy to put up. 4 pegs around the bottom, that's it. Easy. Brilliant. For this season's festivals, ideal.
Fantastic. If you look at the news footage of Glastonbury Festival when it finishes, everybody says, look at the mess they've left. They just can't get their tents back in the bags. It's that simple.
This is a tent you would want to take home and use again. Really, really easy to use, and you would want to reuse and reuse it. They're great.
It's the Motorhome Matt podcast. I'm Keith Gooden.
And I'm Motorhome Matt.
Brought to you by thatleisureshop.com. Before we get into the main part of the podcast, water ingress, we've got something to say.
We have. We've been raving about Ripe's fantastic insurance features, but here's something else I know you'll be excited about. They have a generous offer, a refer a friend scheme. When you purchase a motorhome or campervan insurance policy from Ripe and then refer a friend who also buys a policy, you'll receive a free £50 voucher.
And you can spend it at popular places such as Amazon, Argos, Asda and B&Q.
And the best part, you can refer as many friends as you like. So as well as our exclusive offer for 25% off your motorhome or campervan premium, you can also earn an unlimited amount of £50 vouchers too. Sounds good, Keith?
I'm sold.
Hey, well, click the link in the episode description to start your quote with Ripe and enjoy an automatic 25% discount off your premium. Or give them a call and say Motorhome Matt to get 25% discount over the phone.
It's the Motorhome Matt podcast. I'm Keith Gooden.
And I'm Motorhome Matt.
Brought to you by thatleisureshop.com. Let's talk about the main point of this podcast this week, water ingress.
It is indeed the enemy of the motorhome. Do you know what? Water ingress, or water leaks as you like to call it.
I do like to call them leaks, but you don't like me to call... So he's just said it, hasn't he?
Water leaks sound like an American president.
Water leaks, yeah.
But it is the enemy of the motorhome. Get very expensive very quickly if you get water ingress in your motorhome or caravan.
And the thing is, it doesn't need to be like a puddle forming on top of the motorhome. It can be, you've explained, through capillary action. So 2 different bits of the motorhome joining. Maybe the join has, got worn out over time, and water can get in.
So water can get in and go uphill and then find its way into the motorhome. So where your water's coming in the motorhome is not necessarily where it's leaking into the body. So it's all about sealant. So we had lots of people ask us, Matt, what can I do to make sure I don't suffer with damp or water ingress in my motorhome or caravan? So I thought it'd be great just to give some helpful hints, tips and advice on how to make sure you're not suffering with this, what can be a very expensive problem. So the first thing I would say is a regular damp check. Now, when you have your habitation check, which I recommend you do annually and have done professionally, the engineer will use a very expensive meter, normally called a protometer. They cost about £700. And that cheap one for 10 quid from the supermarket is not going to do the same job at all. But they will check the entire motorhome in all the places they know to check for any high readings of water ingress, so any damp in the walls. Because the thing is with water ingress in a motorhome, it's not like a house. If you walk into a damp house, the smell is horrible, isn't it? Because what you're smelling is damp plaster. Now, obviously, there's no plaster in your motorhome, hopefully, so you're not going to get that smell. So it's a very different experience getting damp in a motorhome. But there are some visible signs, if you have it, which I'll come to in a minute. But my advice is don't park it somewhere like under a tree where tree sap is going to eat away at all the sealant. And rain is going to gather on it, and it's not going to evaporate quickly on the roof because pooling water on the roof, as you say, that will eventually eat away at the sealant and can cause all sorts of problems. So you want to make sure the motorhome, if it's exposed to the elements, that it is outside and the sun can get to it and evaporate the water off the roof.
But of course, people they like to fight for the spaces near and under trees, don't they? Because they're in the shade, especially when they're driving their cars. So you've got to break that habit, because as Matt says, put it under a tree and you're more likely to get water ingress in a motorhome. Whereas if you're parking your car in the shade on a summer's day, then it's going to stay cool. So it's counterintuitive to what you've been used to, isn't it?
Particularly if you're going to leave it there for any length of time. So the roof's just going to go green. and that algae that forms will eat away at your sealant. And another factor as well is frost damage. So a tiniest crack in a bit of sealant on the roof, frost will get in there, freeze the water that's got in there, that tiny droplet of water, and that will cause the crack to expand. It will then thaw out as the weather warms up, and it will happen again. Water will get back in, it will freeze again, expand further, and then the next thing you know, you've got water actually coming through what is.
And that's how potholes are formed as well in the road, isn't it?
Exactly.
Water gets into a small crack, gets into the substrate, it freezes, it pushes the substrate out. Water expands when it freezes.
Yeah.
Remember.
Which is why you should always leave your taps open in the winter as well, so any water left in the tap can expand out of the tap. Now, I'm always asked, Matt, should I use a cover then? Should I put a motorhome cover on my motorhome? We've unpacked this in the past.
Yeah, but you shouldn't, should you? Because you get condensation.
Well, I used to believe that covers weren't a good idea. I now have to say I'm a fan of a motorhome cover, and I use one on our own van. Ours is a metal van rather than a coach-built motorhome. Breathable covers, this is the key. Put a tarpaulin over it, it's a recipe for disaster, but put a proper breathable motorhome cover on it, made by someone reputable like Protec, or Maypole make some budget ones as well, which are universal in size. We sell them at that leisure shop as well. Go and have a look at those. Buy the size that's right for your motorhome, and it will cover the van. And they're a great security device as well, a brilliant deterrent to wandering eyes, because people can't see what you've got. So they can't see what's under the cover. So that's going to protect it from tree sap. So if you have to park it under a tree, definitely fit a cover. In my experience, a cover does not exacerbate damp. It doesn't cause it. They are breathable. A proper cover is breathable, and yeah, water will get through, but it will also dry out.
Don't use bin bags or things or that plastic that people cover allotments with. Don't use that.
Bin bags?
Yeah, plastic. It's plastic, but the thing is, condensation will. But if people haven't got a lot of money, or they think they can make a saving,
you'd need quite a lot of bin bags to cover a motorhome.
You just spend the night sewing them.
The biggest issue with using a tarp, apart from the fact it causes condensation and damp, they move around and they do scratch your vehicle, is actually tying the blessed things down. In our storage business, we've got a few customers that use tarps to cover their motorhome for whatever reason. Perhaps they're leaking, and the number of times I've found them the other side of the yard because they've blown off in the wind. We're going to sort of ask them not to use them anymore.
Yeah, you should stop your owners blowing off in the wind. So what about pressure washers? I tell you, the great thing about getting a pressure washer is you get that selection of wands, don't you? And then you get that one, which is fantastic at doing the patio or the paving outside your house, which is like 10 times strength.
Yeah.
That's good for using on your motorhome.
Yeah, ideal. Perfect. Go for the Paul Daniels wand. Definitely don't use the patio cleaner on your motorhome. So a lot of people say you should not use a pressure washer on a motorhome. So in our hire business at Motorhome Holiday Company, we use a pressure washer on all our motorhomes every day. But the key here is we're using a very expensive pressure washer. It costs thousands of pounds, about $5,000. And the wands, as you call them, or the lance, as we actually call them.
Lance, that's the one.
They're a very special shape, and the pressure has been detuned so that it's not intense, because a pressure washer will blast any loose sealant straight out of the crack, allowing water in there. Not to mention getting water in the fridge vents, flooding the back of the fridge, getting it inside your roof lights and all sorts, and soaking the bed. So the guys do use a pressure washer, but ours is a very expensive one that we can actually change the shape of the water that's being sprayed and the pressure, and they are very, very effective, and they carry chemicals and all sorts as well. So they're a multi-purpose device. But going and buying a pressure washer from a local pressure washers market stall. Is that a thing?
A pressure washer market stall.
From the shop. I'm trying not to say names. I always get told off when I say brands.
Just say the shop.
From a shop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The yellow ones beginning with K, for example.
Yeah. So what?
So going and buying a pressure washer from your supermarket
or shop,
they are designed to wash a metal car, and even then I'd be careful, but they are designed to clean your patio. Ideal. But even then you should be careful, because you can ruin your patio very quickly. Frost will damage that as well. So yeah, buying a professional pressure washer is a very good idea, and if you're not sure, just don't use one. It's not worth doing that. The other question people always ask me is, how do I clean the roof can I walk on the roof? Now, walking on the roof can be perilous. You can slip and fall, obviously.
Is it bad for the motorhome, though?
But you can also cause the roof to move about, yeah. And this can cause strain on the joints because your weight is a downward force and that's pulling in on the walls. That could cause damage and could cause cracks to appear. It depends what the motorhome's made of. Now, pressure washing the roof is obviously an easy way to clean the roof. But again, you need to be super careful. And inspecting the sealant whilst you're up there is a really, really sensible thing to do. So if you see little cracks appearing in the sealant, just put your fingernail on it and check, is it loose? Does it need oversealing or does it need removing and filling in with new sealant?
Is that sealant you're talking about the stuff we use in the bathrooms?
No. So that is internal use, not external use. So we recommend, as a range of products that we use, I would definitely be taking it to a caravan service centre. They will happily reseal your motorhome. It doesn't take very long. You're probably going to spend tens, maybe hundreds of pounds, but it's not going to cost a lot of money compared to the 5,000 or more that a damp repair could cost. So keeping an eye on sealant. In fact, there was a lady just bought a motorhome from us here and she asked me this. I thought, gosh, what a great question. How often should I be checking my sealant? Well, if you have a hab check done every year, it will get inspected, hopefully, if the service centre are reputable that does it. But there's no harm at all in several times a year. Get up a ladder, use a cushion to lean against the motorhome, tie it to the ladder and rest that against the motorhome, climb the ladder and have a look around the perimeter of the roof because that's the obvious place that water's going to come in, and just keep an eye on your sealant, check there's none missing or it's not cracking up.
So just walking upstairs and using a pair of binoculars is...
I've heard about you walking upstairs using your binoculars.
So what early signs should we be looking out for actually in or on the motorhome for water ingress then?
Yeah, so it's really hard to find sometimes. It's not always obvious. Staining on the wallboard is one. So that can be the wood stain coming through the wallboard. So the wallboard is laminated and you can get dark staining on the walls. Little cracks appearing in the wallboard can be a sign. If where the wallboard joins together and you've got that tape, if the tape is coming away or the gap is opening up, that can be a sign that the wallboard is swelling or shrinking as the water is soaking into it. If you get pimpling on the wallboard or stippling, so it's really pointy bits going on, that is a sign that water has been in that wallboard and dried out. And as it dries into the interior where the heat is, it pulls the wallboard into the van and you get like a porcupine effect on the wall. And if you've got that stippling, you have had damp and you may still have damp. So it's definitely worth getting that investigated. And obviously soft squidgy wood, because most motorhomes have wooden interiors. The wallboards themselves are literally board. They go soft and squidgy with water. So keep an eye on that. Check around the bottom, like the skirting board area. Just put your fingers in around there because water will naturally go to the ground with gravity. So check around the bottom where it can gather and check that's not going soft. Obvious water in the motorhome. You might get pooling in the garage or somewhere in a corner of the living area. If you see that, then that definitely needs investigating.
It could be a bit squelchy underfoot, couldn't it?
It could be. The floors often are wood and they're often not undersealed. And someone did ask a question recently, didn't they, about undersealing a motorhome? And my advice was, if it is wood, definitely a good idea. But if you feel squelchy underfoot or it feels different, get it investigated straight away. And the other thing about going on the roof, checking the roof, I see this a lot on Facebook where you get something called delamination. So the roof starts to look like a lunar landscape. It's all lumpy and it's almost like it's moving. Now, many manufacturers of motorhomes, Roller Team are a classic for this. They don't actually bond the outer surface of the motorhome to the infrastructure underneath it. And that is to allow the roof to expand and contract and move around. Whereas if it was bonded on, it would actually move the wood or the fabric that's making that superstructure of the motorhome.
Because it's easy to underestimate, isn't it? Even in a normal British summer's day, how much materials do move when
a lot,
exposed to the sun.
Yeah, especially plastics. They're going to warm up and expand and contract. So if you ever go on the roof of your motorhome and it looks really lumpy and bumpy, don't necessarily panic. They're often like that from brand new, very deliberately. If you see it though, however, on the side walls, the walls normally are bonded. If you start to see, it's called delamination, where you get this lumpy effect on the side, you probably have got a damp issue going on, and it's caused that glue to give up and the outer surface of the motorhome to pull away from the timbers underneath it or the structure underneath it, and it's called, as I say, delamination. That's a surefire sign that you've got some damp going on in the wall.
And just to reiterate, that there will be no smell because there's no plaster.
No smell, in the same way as you would in a house.
But if your carpet is a bit damp, then you'll get a smell out of
that. Could smell, absolutely. And it's very difficult to detect damp sometimes. You need to know what signs to look for. But the classics, as I say, are staining, obvious signs of water in a motorhome, where's it coming from? And remember, where it's pooling is not necessarily where it's leaking in. And stippling is a sign you've had damp, and soft, squishy wood, that's a surefire. And the thing is, when we embark on a damp repair, we take the bit apart where there's evidence of damp. That can expand and expand, and I've had motorhomes in the past come into us where it's the entire side, and
You've got a little story about a motorhome, haven't you, that came into you?
Several. So we had a relatively new motorhome come into us. It was 6 years old, for a habitation check, and there was a pooling of water in the garage. We thought, is a pipe leaking? Anyway, on investigation during the damp check, there was damp in the bottom corner of this motorhome, and it was actually coming in the roof in the top corner, which the owner had noticed the sealant had cracked whilst they were cleaning the roof back 6 months ago. Well, 6 months later, damp check being done, and lo and behold, there are high readings of around 25-30 in the rear corner of the motorhome. So we then instigated a damp repair for that corner, which turned into quite a hassle because the rear bumper had to be removed. But even at that early stage, that was going to cost a couple of £1,000 to repair. It's labour that costs the money, you see. It takes so much time. And we were able to get that repair effected and the sealant fixed, and the motorhome lives another day. But if that was left, that could have spread all into the back wall, all across the garage floor, into the side wall, and could have been £10,000 or more to repair very quickly. So if you see damp, do get it fixed straight away, and please get a damp check every year. It's really important.
Yeah, don't think, I'll get round to that in a couple of months' time once I've saved up. Once you get water, It's like when you get water in your house, you deal with it immediately, isn't it?
Another tale as well, I'm not going to name anybody here. We sold a motorhome, and the guy had some water coming in through a roof light, so the window in the roof, and he took it to a dealership local to him who said, oh yeah, the roof's all damp, mate, and quoted him £15,000 for the repair. This was weeks after we'd sold it, and we had done a habitation check on it. I was in disbelief. I said, no, I don't accept that. Something's gone awry here. And we had had a lot of rain. It was probably a few months after we'd sold it, to be fair. So he said, well, I'll get a second opinion. Took it to another dealership, and they said, yep, the roof's wet, needs a whole new roof. It was an Auto Trail motorhome, I'll say that much. And it was a tag axle Cheyenne. It's a big, big motorhome. And they said, yep, roof's gone, £12,000. I said, well, I'd like to investigate, because I find it incredulous that three months maximum after we'd sold it to you, this problem has become so real, because we would have picked it up and here we would have fixed that before we sold it. So he agreed, he brought it back, and with Bristol Caravans, who I'd rave about locally to us, Oakley and I spent an hour stripping out the inside this motorhome to get to where this water was coming in. And yes, there was a leak. The roof light sealant had failed and water was coming in, and it was leaking in where, quite away from where the leak was occurring. And we went round with a damp meter. There was absolutely no reason at all to replace the roof on that motorhome. Not at all. There was no damp in it at all. And we went round with a damp meter. We videoed this so that the buyer, the new owner, had the peace of mind that it wasn't damp. And I think we spent £500 or £600 repairing it. And it took a bit of time, but we resealed all of the roof. There was some crazing on the roof exterior. You get this like spiderweb effect where the outer coating of the van had started to crack in the sun with age. We chose to pay to have that all repaired and resprayed, just in case that was going to cause a problem. We resealed it all, and it was literally hundreds of pounds. So sometimes going to a reputable dealer will save you thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. But the question here is, how do you know they're reputable? Both of these companies are reputable brands. I'm not going to name them, but they will be known brands to everyone listening to this podcast, I am sure. And the first one wanted to say, just put a new roof on it, £15,000. I think it's daylight robbery. So it is definitely worth getting several investigations into this. And if you can, ask if you can see the investigation. So when the roof interior is taken out, the window surrounds are taken out, ask to go and see it. Say, can I look at the damp meter readings with you? And if they're reputable, they will happily do that. If they're just generating work for themselves, they absolutely won't. And I suggest you put the keys in the ignition and drive somewhere else.
So do you think with these dealers who were giving these quotes, it was ignorance, or they were just, as you say, making work for themselves?
I wouldn't want to say.
No.
But I'm definitely not naming them, but it was absolutely shocking for me.
Yeah.
I was taken aback.
Let's just go through the checklist then of things you should be looking for. Sealant around the roof and windows.
Yeah, I keep going on about sealant, but many motorhomes are, these days, the wooden floor goes in and then the sides go on top of the wooden floor, and then there's a plastic kind of capping that goes around the outside. If the sealant along the top of that capping fails, the water will run down inside of it and it's going to make contact with the edge of the floor and then soak into the floor, ruining your floor. Fixing that is an absolute headache because the floor went in first, before the walls and before all the furniture. So getting in to repair that is a difficult job. So check your sealant and check it twice. Really important.
Places where things have been installed, what sort of things?
Yeah, so say you've had a television aerial or a satellite dish or Wi-Fi aerial, solar panel, where these things are drilled into the roof need to be sealed properly. Yeah. And this type of accessory being fitted might compromise the manufacturer warranty. So very often, increasing numbers of manufacturers are putting 10-year water ingress warranties on their motorhomes because they're that confident they're not going to leak. But you then drill a 25mm hole and put a Wi-Fi aerial on the roof. If it's not sealed properly and it leaks, the manufacturer is not going to take any responsibility for any damp repair that can be blamed on that drill hole. So really make sure you double check any aftermarket fixtures and fittings. And
the glands carrying cables.
This is Beavis and Butthead, isn't it?
Glands.
He's a glands. So yeah, likewise with a solar install, we had a situation recently. Someone bought a brand new motorhome. It was a beautiful Naus motorhome, stunning, and there was water coming in the bedroom. It was literally a month old, and the engineer, in their wisdom, had used cable conduit, a box conduit where you clip the lid on, which is fine. That's often used and sealed onto the roof, to run the cable from the solar panel all the way around the motorhome into a cable gland. And what was unwittingly happening is the rain was gathering inside that conduit, and it was like a rain channel, and it was making sure it was running in through the cable
It's
gland.
called a rat's tail.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, a rat's tail. When you use a piece of rope or chain to guide water, say into a water butt or something like that.
I thought that's what you were trying to grow.
No. So it formed it into a rat's tail. So the water flows over the top.
It was very effective.
Yeah.
But got the curtains soaking wet. And with John Gooch, the lovely John from Life Beyond Bricks, he was here helping us. John's a bit of a habitation engineer when it comes to motorhomes. And we couldn't figure out why this was leaking. John did. He said, look, what's happening? It's gathering in the conduit. So we changed the cable gland with one that was sealed, and we drilled some holes in the conduit so the water would come out. So the water was still allowed to free run in and out of it, but it could come out. That's the point. And we sealed up the cable gland. And the dealer that sold it to them paid for the repair, which was great. So, it's being mindful of things like that as well.
Okay, then. So run out right now to the motorhome. Check everything that Matt's been talking about, because you never know, you might find something that could prove expensive.
Yeah. Absolutely. And do get a habitation check every year. I have this debate all the time. Oh, well, I can do most of it myself. Get one done. Go and do it.
It's the Motorhome Matt podcast. I'm Keith Gooden.
And I'm Motorhome Matt.
It's brought to you by thatleisureshop.com. It's our Q&A, the question and answers, where you ask the questions and Matt, the expert on the Motorhome Matt podcast, answers them. And if he doesn't know, he'll find somebody that does. First of all, Matthew Barnes is in Kent.
Hello, Matt and Keith. I'm also a Matt. I know. Who would have thought there's more than one of us? I live down in deepest, darkest Kent, and I've been watching your YouTube podcasts now for about a year. I've already liked and followed you, and I really do enjoy your content and the humour that you two produce when you get together. My question is about electric hookup on the campsites. and what I can and can't run. I'm really thinking here more about the earache I get from my wife and whether she can use a hairdryer. I find it all very confusing with watts, amps and volts, and I wondered if you could give it to me in layman's terms. And apparently it gets even worse if I leave the UK and head to Europe. So your insight would be gratefully received. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work, guys.
So that's Matt Barnes in Kent. So,
Thanks, Matt.
other Matt, what do you reckon?
Easy. So this is all about Ohm's law, but if you start Googling Ohm's law, it gets really complicated. Yeah, exactly. So I cheat. So I'm going to get chastised for this because this is not purely correct electrical maths. But check the hairdryer. That's the first thing to do. I did Google hairdryers, so now my other half thinks she's getting a hairdryer for her birthday. 2.4 kilowatts is a very standard kind of rating, power rating of the hairdryer. Power is measured in watts. Now, campsites are often measured in amps. So how do you convert watts to amps? You divide by volts. So let me explain. We live in a world where in this country our voltage is typically 240 volts. Not quite correct, it's 230, but let's go 240. A 2,400 watt hairdryer divided by 240 is going to draw 10 amps. So on a campsite, there's only 5 amps, like they are often in France. You're going to trip the power because you haven't got enough capability there to allow that much current, which is measured in amps. So 2,400 watts divided by 240 is 10 amps. So if you've got a 1 kilowatt or 1,000 watt appliance, divide that by 250, let's just round it up a bit, you've got 4 amps. And if you're on a 5 amp supply, that will be fine. So I generally take a kilowatt and divide it by 4 because 250 volts is close enough. That will give us the number of amps. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, I was always taught that volts is the power that pushes the electricity down the wire, and how fast that goes is the amps, and then the power that comes out at the end is the watts. I like your way of dividing into it. So when you go to, say, France, are they on 230 or 120? No, they're on 230, aren't
230 volt as well.
But if you go to America, they're on 120.
Yeah, or 110 even.
Yeah.
So in France, often across the continent, often the campsites have much lower power outlets, which is why if you've got a Truma boiler, you've got the option of 1 kilowatt or 1 flame or zigzag, the lightning symbol, or 2. Now, I again round that up. It's actually 800 watts or 1600 watts. I round them up to 1 kilowatt or 2 kilowatt, particularly for people who don't understand this. And so if you're in France, you need to be using the 1 kilowatt because that's 4 amps. So 1 kilowatt, 1,000 divided by 4 is 4 amps. And that's going to be fine. That should work. If you're on 2 kilowatts, 2,000 divided by 4, you're drawing 8 amps. So you need to make sure you're on a campsite that is offering you at least 8 amps. And campsites usually are measured in amperage, how many amps are going to give you. Some might be power, but normally power is a method or a measurement for consumption, not supply. As you say, amps is about how much it takes to push down the cable. So the 4 is the key. So 250 volt, use that voltage.
Because everything's between 230 and 240.
Somewhere around there, yeah. You're close enough. Now, the other thing, word of warning, if your wife's using a hairdryer and she's got it on full power, 2,400 watts, and you're on a 10 amp supply, you're using all the power, you then flick the electric kettle on, and that's 2 kilowatts, another 2,000 watts, that's another 8 amps, suddenly 18 amps, you add the two together, trip, bang. Your motorhome's going to trip out, or the campsite's going to trip out, or worse than that, you trip the trip in the warden's office and take the whole campsite out. That is easily done. And in the winter, I see people using electric patio heaters and all sorts to warm their gazebos and their awnings, and I see the whole run go dark regularly because we're all just drawing too much power. So that's how you do the basic maths. So I would suggest get your wife, if it's tripping out the motorhome, to use a lower power setting on a hairdryer, don't use the electric kettle, or same for your heating and hot water. If you've got electric option, don't use that. Use the gas option if you've got one available instead.
Yeah, always remember converting electrical energy into heat is the most inefficient way of using it, so you're going to consume much more.
Yeah.
There you go, Matt. I hope that's helped you. Colin Boardman is in Grange-over-Sands and says, I have a Fiat Ducato-based motorhome with full LED headlights, the 2023 model year, for driving on the continent. Do I need to put the beam benders on the headlights? I haven't found a definitive answer on the internet, and even my Fiat professional dealer doesn't seem to know. Do you know?
So you're lucky to have LED headlights. This came up again recently, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
It was an option that Fiat offered and then withdrew because they ran out of the components to fit them, and so everyone was back to standard headlights. My advice is do the garage door test in the dark. So drive up to a garage door or a wall or a fence, a vertical flat surface, drive up to it and look at the shape of your headlights at night. If they are symmetrical, so they are kind of hooped and they go down on the left and the right, you don't need to fit the beam benders, the little sticker on the headlight. If they're asymmetrical and they go up on the left-hand side, it would be in this country, to light up the pavement, when you're driving on the continent, you'll be blinding the oncoming driver. You would need to fit the stickers. Now, my experience is that the LEDs are symmetrical. They go down at both sides, or even they're flat. They're a flat beam. You can see this really visually up against a wall at night. If they're flat, you don't need to fit them.
And when we talked about it last time, there was mention with some vehicles with LED headlights that you can change the shape of them from inside the cab. There's a control.
Yes, so that tends to be a BMW feature, which BMW as yet have not made a motorhome to my knowledge. But on the dashboard, you can, edit the control left or right lane driving. In some A-class motorhomes, so the ones that look like a bus, they might have round headlights and they might be xenon, and there's a lever on the back of them where you can actually adjust and turn the light and adjust the beam, therefore, for when you're on the continent. I remember the Adria Sonic had that feature, ours did. But just point them at a wall at night time, wait for the sun to go down and see what shape your lights are, and you'll be able to work this out. And
even if you have to put, as you call it, the beam benders on, it's only the work of a few minutes, so it's not the end of the world. Yeah. Thanks, Colin. Steve Saunders is in Nottingham. Hi, Matt and Kevin.
There it is. Ring the bell.
Ding, ding. He says, quick question. In just over a week's time, I'm driving to Greece via Belgium, Germany, Austria, Croatia, Montenegro and Albania. Spoke to the insurance company who informed me I'm only covered third party in Montenegro and Albania. That obviously is not great. I just wondered if you had any experience or ideas on how to get cover for these countries. Many thanks, says Steve. P.S. Sorry, Keith, it does make me smile at your face when people call you Kevin on the podcast.
Or Chris.
Oh, well. Have you got an answer for Steve then, Matt?
Well, we went to Ripe, sponsors of the podcast, and we asked them for their view. And they said, we can provide cover for all member countries of the European Union, as well as Andorra, Gibraltar, Iceland, Norway, Serbia, Switzerland, Bosnia, Herzegovina and Montenegro.
Do you mean Herzegovina?
That place. I've never been there.
Yeah.
Maybe we should put it on the list.
It used to be Yugoslavia, didn't it?
I was going to say,
Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina and Montenegro all used to be Yugoslavia, didn't they?
I'm sure they did, yeah. The reason is green cards are not required for these countries as they are member states or signatories to the EU Motor Directive. If you select EU cover under your policy with Ripe, you would be insured fully comprehensively in these countries. If you do not select EU cover, you would be insured third party only.
Yeah, and you can do a top-up, because I always insure my car just for the UK, and if we have a pop abroad, I just do a top-up, and it costs £25 or £30 for a week. It's so you can save a little bit of money.
It would on your car. I've seen it.
Okay then, Matt. That's the Q&A for today. I'm a poet and didn't know it. How do people get in touch?
Easy. Just go to mhmp.info/ask Matt. We'd love it if you could record your question. Then we can play your voice into the podcast. Hit the orange button. You can listen to it back, press submit, or you can fill in the form and ask your question that way, and then Keith and I read it out.
And how do you subscribe then, Matt?
You do. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell and the subscribe button. And our YouTube channel is brought to you by arabasecreative.co.uk.
And if you care and you have a flair, you can share.
You're like Shakespeare today. We'd love it if you did share with a friend. Just share a link to the podcast and help spread the word of the podcast. You never know, they might find it useful and maybe entertaining as well.